Adonai neri tamid ki mimini balemot lechen smach libi yagel gevodi af besari shkon lavetach ki lo tazon nafshi lishol lo titen chaskedcha lirot shacher todieni orachayim orachayim smasach meachot et panaha ne'emot ben min hanetzach Shiviti Adonai l'neri tamid ki mimini balemot.
We have a difficult task today to celebrate the amazing life and untimely death of Annalee Letchinger. It's a tradition for the principal mourners, that is to say, the spouse, the siblings, and the children, to tear their clothes or to wear a ribbon, which gets torn, to show how they are torn on the inside rather than pulling out their hair, which they might feel like doing. So I'm going to come down and do that with the members of the family right now. I know the people in this room are from so many different aspects of Annalee's life. So what the family would like you to do right now is to turn to someone maybe behind you, someone who wouldn't know, and explain what is your connection to Annalee. Go ahead.
Oh, say shalom Imrama. Huya say shalom Aleinu. Ve'akol Yisrael. Ve'himru, ve'himru, ve'himru. Amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom Aleinu ve'akol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom Aleinu ve'akol Yisrael.
We invite Ruthie Landis, Annalee's beloved sister-in-law, to share a poem by Mary Oliver with you.
You know, the last few days have been so gray. And I walked out today, and the sky was so blue. The sun was so bright. It was like, that's Annie. That's Annie. The light and the blue sky, clear. So, about 30 years ago, I came upon this poem, and it's called The Summer Day. When I read it 30 years ago, the person I thought of was Annalee. She is this poem. She is the summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with enormous, complicated eyes. Now, she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Kohelet, chapter 3. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And this is the time to speak about the life and loss of Annalee. Her brother Ed will speak first.
There was a constancy and consistency about Annalee. She remained true to herself throughout her lifetime. I was fortunate to be her younger brother, her first younger brother, anyway, and I bear witness to this fact. I got a text yesterday from an old Peace Corps acquaintance. She was acknowledging Annalee's passing. My friend reminded me that she and her husband had met my sister in their little town in Ghana. What struck me, though, is how Annalee then and the Annalee now were constant. My 25-year-old sister had traveled 6,000 miles each way to visit her 22-year-old brother in the midst of my 2-year volunteer assignment. She loved to travel then and now. She'd gotten her master's in England and hitchhiked in Israel, so Africa was perhaps just another adventure. I'm sure she'd long ago exceeded that 12,000-mile visit to me, traveling to see her 5 wonderful kids and grandchildren, Nora, Lior, and Oren. She instilled in them a way to savor life and adventures and learn about other people and their cultures. When I saw her in Africa all those years ago, she gave me a big hug. Her embrace reminded me that home was reaching out to me, no matter where I was, because Annie brought love and home with her wherever she went. Her busy schedule became highlighted by each of her love trips to see family and friends. She seemed to leap across the world in great happy strides, effortlessly, graciously, always enthusiastically. The distances became irrelevant. The obstacles, minor. She always had a story to tell. Our own travels together began when we were little, on long summer road trips with our parents. We got the back seat. I was a squirmy little boy, and when I was tired, I wanted to stretch out and lie my head on my big sister's skinny, bony lap. "Get off of me," she'd scream. "Your crew cut is itchy." My mother would have to mediate and distract us, teaching us how to say, "Open the window" and "close the door" in French. And let's see how many different state license plates we could count. We spent hours playing together at municipal golf courses all over the country, while Dad and Mom walked 9 holes of golf. And we both loved it when our vacations let us ride horses. So let's say we loved each other, but we were not always best friends as kids. Thinking back to school days, she was a wonderfully accomplished student, typically getting all A's and beloved by all her teachers. And in yet another manifestation of how very different we were as students, she also had what I thought was probably the most beautiful handwriting in the world. And on top of all that, she became an accomplished cellist in high school and played in college too. I didn't want to compete with that in high school. So instead of going to Senn, which was 3 blocks away, I chose Lane Tech, which was 3 miles away. Having a superhero as an older sister was sometimes daunting. But by my senior year, there was only one college I applied to. Hers. Somehow she had become a supportive big sister and was no longer a threat. After becoming a mom, she gradually took on the duties of our family's matriarchs by gradually taking on the many ways of caring that our own mother had adopted from her mother, Grandma Fanny. That meant hosting a Shabbat dinner every Friday, 52 weeks a year. Or hosting family, friends, and extended family for high holidays, Hanukkah, and her big, beautiful, inclusive, and engaging Pesach Seders. Our mother took these burdens off of her mother. And in her time, Annalee took them on, joyously, spiritually, and lovingly, in her own very special way. I loved going to her Seders and her Shabbat dinners, and I will miss that terribly. She did notoriously enter into an annual sort of pre-Purim trance in which she stayed up until 2 a.m. for nights after night, preparing generous hamantash and gifts for family and friends. And not just with 3 glorious fillings, but of course there were also 2 different kinds of dough. We loved them all. The flaky pastry dough, or my favorite, cookie dough. The apricot, the prune, the poppy seed. One wanted to try them all, which one did. She was abundant with love and food. And her overflowing kitchen table, the crowded countertops of her kitchen, and the sometimes inscrutable depths of her refrigerator attest to that abundance. But how do we go on? How do we move on without her? In the solar system, what happens to the planets when the sun itself goes dark? There are laws of physics that apply to that, but still unknown to us is how we as family adjust our orbits to keep her memory alive. As a light in that darkness, which only love can overcome. My sister was someone who leaves a large imprint behind her. We may not replace her bright, burning light, but we can let ourselves remember that warmth inside of our hearts. Annalee was an adventurer who would stride across the world to keep the bonds of love alive and strong.
JB, also known as Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you, Marilyn. Bear with me if I fumble through this my own way. The old Temple Emanuel. I was bar mitzvahed here, went to Sunday school here. Got in trouble here. I've come, as they say, to pay respects. So have you. For me, my nieces, nephews, brother, and in-laws, it's much more than that. Annalee was taken from us suddenly, unfairly. I know she may have accepted it at some level, but it was also abrupt for her. Life has a way of breezing by, bruising, bringing happiness, disappointments, and rapid fire, peaks, valleys. I was raised by a little village, as the saying goes, and also, like so many of my generation, was left to my own devices. My mother worked sometimes. She was older. She had 2 kids finishing high school and an aging mother of her own to take care of. My sister somehow saw this, or me, as an opportunity or a mission. Or maybe I told myself I was just irresistibly lovable. She made me feel special in a way I've only felt in my closest relationships later in life. And I think this has occurred with more individuals than just myself. In a way, I share some of the same experiences with all of Annalee's kids. They should realize that I was probably her first experiment. Her first experiment at mothering. And my own children should know that some of the adventures, the physical affection, and even some bedtime stories may have had their roots in Annalee's expressions of love. We were 17 years apart, and gradually came to be closer to peers. We shared news of our own kids, which were her absolute favorite subject of conversation. Music and kids, especially family, were some of what she treasured most. She kept the tradition. We grew up at our parents' home with regular doses of classical music, as many of you knew my father. That was his life. She kept the tradition alive with, among other things, a constant stream of WFMT on the kitchen radio for at least or nearly 50 years. Annalee was a cellist. I thought for a second that was Annalee's cello, and I thought that was an incredible image, but it's David's cello. It's still an incredible image. Among other pursuits, happiness and fulfillment to her came from sharing her husband David's music with him, creating from scratch an entire orchestra for my father to conduct after he was out of the music education business, and then performing in that orchestra with David, even while in the last days of pregnancy, which seemed the natural choice for her. Later, she shared in all of her children's musical and artistic experiences, every single one of them, and escapades, which brought her intense joy. And also, need I mention birthing at home. Without meds, doctors, celebrating every possible milestone of her children and extended family. I think she especially enjoyed the deep and serious musical journeys taken by Ethan and Danny. I know seeing Ethan perform and shepherding him all over the country to auditions and schools was not a chore for her, but rather something that gave life meaning. As I reflect, I try to discover a thread of wisdom here, or a lesson I can learn from this tragedy. And I call it that not for drama, but because I have so suddenly lost a key person in my life, as have so many of you. This is someone gone before their time, yet having lived a miraculous life. I can only think, what conclusion or lesson would Annalee want me to derive from this? How to look at the example of how she lived her life, maybe, and how she left it. It could simply be, enjoy the time we have, embrace family and friends, dig as deeply as possible into conversations and life rituals, cook more, host bigger events, extend myself, take a deeper interest in other people, and think how I can make others' lives better and richer, perhaps. Thank you for being here, for listening. Your support means a lot.
We invite Annalee's beloved friend Anne Burghardt to speak.
Hi, everyone. The size of this group, such a testament to how many people Annalee touched. It's wonderful to see all of you here. I am an old friend of Annie's. I counted, I think it's 55 years that we shared our lives. In the Torah study group that Annalee started many decades ago, Rabbi Shulman of blessed memory used to talk about how often in life, I'm sorry, I'll get through this, but it'll be with some haltingness. How often in life words fail to communicate what we really feel. Sometimes music does it far better, which is something that Annalee and her family well understand. I am more sad and more grateful than words can express. In this life, if we are very lucky, we find one, maybe two, maybe even more friends who become our soulmates. Annie, to me, has been my soul sister and always will be. We met, I think, in 1971. Both of us were assigned to work in a new JCC program called College Outreach, an effort to reach out to commuter students who were Jewish that really weren't involved much in campus life and bring them together. We felt a special connection almost right away. I was 25, she was 24. We spent hours talking about everything: hopes, dreams, romances, family, career, and the rest. Part of our bond was that we both feared that we would never be able to bear children. Annie invited me into her family. I remember sitting in Lila's kitchen, her mother Lila, all of us yakking away together. Her parents became part of my Chicago family. I came here from Buffalo. I was included in holiday celebrations, got to know Eddie, JB, their cousins, and later their spouses. I adored them all. Later, they even welcomed my parents into the fold when they came to visit us for the holidays. And welcome is the right word. I can see Irving coming to open the front door with a radiant smile, calling out, "Welcome, welcome friends. Come and join our loving circle." Annie carried on that generous tradition of openness and the sharing of love, even welcoming people to move in with her own family during times of transition. I did that myself at a time when I returned from an extended stay in Israel and had given up my apartment. She was my anchor during more than one difficult period in my life. Over 55 years as friends, we went through so many seasons, sharing laughter and tears and celebrating all the milestones in each of our lives and the lives of her wonderful children. Though I was never able to have my own, she shared her children with me and made me a godmother to Dara. I was honored to be present at Ethan's birth, experiencing the miracle of childbirth vicariously. This was one of many gifts Annie bestowed on me. We were like in some ways, very different in others. Having come from a serious family burdened with Holocaust loss, her buoyancy and optimism helped me open to the joys in life. Her ability to create what was not there before, like the Jewish Arts Orchestra that she created for her dad, creating an orchestra. It blew me away. Like, people do this? People like me do this? She inspired me to think big and follow my own creative dreams. Her way of living life on her own terms strengthened my courage to do likewise. Her unconditional love helped me to know I was okay as I was. Losing Annie is devastating, as powerful in a different way as losing my soulmate husband, Mel. Though we won't become very old ladies together, reminiscing in our rocking chairs as we had planned, I know she will be right with me here in my heart, I will never lose my love for her and hers for me. Her amazing life force is still here with us, her family and friends, and will always be. I want to say to David, Rafi, Evie, Dara, Danny, Ethan, Nora, Leor, and Oren, and the spouses, I know you will bring great comfort to each other and share oh so many wonderful memories of Annie. If I can be of any comfort as well, I am here for you.
Nina?
Hi, I'm surprised I don't know everyone here, but I'm Nina. I'm married to Ethan. I first met Annalee in 2012. I had recently met Ethan at Northwestern, and he told me his mom could give me a ride home for the Thanksgiving break. She picked us up in the family van, and as Ethan had warned me, she lightly stepped on the brakes every time she asked me a question about myself. The next week, I met her again at Park Plaza, which was a retirement home where Ethan was playing a violin recital. Annalee and David came with Lila, who Ethan told me at the time was his grandma and his mom's best friend. Soon after that, Ethan invited me over to the house for dinner. He gave me the address and told me to come in through the back door. And at this moment, I'll invite you all to think about maybe either the first time you walked into that back door, or maybe the most recent time you walked into that back door. I didn't understand the instructions and I went in through the front door, but I soon learned to park in the back and walk in through the back. When I came into the house for the first time, Annalee was invariably standing at the oven, chopping a vegetable or assembling a salad. Danny was living in Chicago at the time, and after he introduced himself, he asked me if I wanted to play games or chamber music, and I thought I was in heaven. The first dinner, Annalee was so excited to learn that I had 3 sisters, and she wanted to know about each of them in great detail, and for the past 13 years, she continued to ask about them in great detail. That first night, I declined 2 invitations that she offered for me. The first was to watch Ethan's birth video. And wait. The second invitation was to sleep over that night. But she did tell Ethan that he had to drive me and my bike back to my house that evening. In college, Ethan and I visited the house about once a week. We would run over there for dinner. Annalee loved making Ethan's favorite dishes, but she didn't let him take over the leftovers because she wanted to have the pleasure of watching him eat the leftovers in front of her. She always wanted to know how his lessons were going. That was the big topic of conversation. And I would tease her that he was disappointing his teacher because he wasn't practicing enough. Annalee would get really worried by this ongoing joke that we continued to tell, but she could never quite tell if I was telling the truth or not. And so I guess from that, maybe you've all experienced this. She was the first person I'd ever met who really didn't do sarcasm. That was not how she did it. A few years later, when I went to graduate school in Cleveland, I began to talk to Annalee on the phone, almost as much as I was talking to Ethan, who was living in New Haven at the time. I can't remember how it started, but soon into my master's program, Annalee became my editor. For years, Annalee read every single paper, reflection, annotated bibliography that I submitted for class. She read my dissertation more times than both me and my advisor read that thing. I looked back at my documents on my computer and I found most of them with the title Paper plus Annalee Edits. She and I got straight A's. She taught me all of the grammar rules. She showed me the artistic use of the comma, went back and forth over word choice, thought through proper citation etiquette, and agonized about concluding paragraphs over the phone. Annalee was always so excited to talk about the niche topics of the various music classes I was taking. First of all, I thought it was entirely normal that I talked to my boyfriend's mom on the phone every single day. And I also thought that it was entirely normal that she was as interested as I was in Berlioz's orchestration choices, the opening chords of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and the development of the classical concerto. One of the magical qualities of Annalee was that she was always available. Whether I finished a paper at 9, 10, 1 a.m., or 2 hours before the class, there was always enough time for her to look at it. I have this image of her hovering over her laptop computer late at night, working on my edits after coming home from a concert. Annalee's other magical quality was her genuine affirmation of my work. I was looking back at some email exchanges we had, and I'm going to read one that I think captures her spirit. Quote, "I had a good time using my favorite color to highlight everything I changed, which was to either change a comma into a semicolon, or to delete a comma, or to add a comma. There was one sentence that seemed to be missing a word, and one place where I inserted a couple of words which may or may not be necessary, all very minor. I think it's a solid paper that deserves an A for sure. I renamed the document so you can either use it, deleting the colors, or refer to it and use your original as you wish. Cheers, Annalee." When Ethan and I moved to DC, I continued to call Annalee on long drives to work. On the way to teaching, I would complain to her about how far it was and how unreasonable my bosses were. And on the way back, I would recount in great detail each hour-long lesson. She remembered my students by name and would often call David to come to the phone to get his perspective on a particular teaching point. Throughout the call, she often said things like, "You're such a natural teacher," and "those students are so lucky to have you." The past couple of years, Annalee has been editing my job applications, and this is her response to my CV. "It looks fantastic, and the content reveals an even more fantastic teacher, performer, and scholar, and composer. The only edits I suggest are the deletion or addition of a few commas and getting rid of unnecessary thes, none of which are crucial and which should affect the spacing. I'm glad you sent the PDF since the spacing looks different on my Word version. Terrific job, and starting with your education is fine. Thanks for giving me the pleasure of seeing all the amazing things you are currently involved with. Brava, hope you're having a fun day celebrating Ethan's birthday." Each time I applied for something, she would act as if I had already gotten the job and fantasize about my life in the new city, wondering when she would come visit, and worrying about what Ethan would do for work there. When I didn't get the job, she would just say, "Oh well, they're lost." Our last collaboration was a couple months ago when she helped me craft an email asking for a raise, helping me find the perfect tone, but unfortunately we didn't get the raise. It's hard to conclude this picture of Annalee as she lived in my life. If I were writing a paper as she taught me, it would be appropriate to move to the general and maybe say something about her commitment to family, her love of scholarship, and her positive spirit, which you all undoubtedly experienced. But I think the most beautiful thing about Annalee was the specific. She had a personal relationship with the people she loved. She really tried to meet people in the ways they needed. She remembered the details, and for her, this was a labor of love.
Eve, with an assist from Danny.
And a last-minute assist from my son, Lior, as well. Thank you all for being here. On behalf of all of my closest family members, it just means so much to see this overflow crowd and all of your support. And I know it's not just for us, but it's for my mom. Let me begin with talking about this table that you see right here. I'm pretty sure most of you recognize it, or even that you've sat at it before. And I'm also sure that it looks as strange and out of place sitting on this bima as it does to all of us, because it should be in our kitchen. My brother Rafi shared with our family yesterday that there's a tradition from medieval France that when the head of a household would die, they would cut up their dining room table and use the wood to make a coffin. My mom never wanted to be put in a coffin. Also, our table is made out of plastic. But this table, being so out of place in this room, symbolizes her death and her presence more than anything else we could think of. Our home is unimaginably empty and strange feeling without her in it, like our kitchen without the kitchen table. There's a Jewish teaching that says that when the temple stood, the altar atoned for the Jewish people, and now a person's dining room table brings out a rekindling of their relationship with God. With my mom, we can point to the table and say, in her little corner, with the food that she had, she connected heaven and earth. In our little corner, my mom made a difference. Through the meals she prepared, the countless Shabbat dinners, the Passover Seders, and so much more, we were nourished by my mom. We nourished her by being her guest. The biggest light or feeling of trust and acceptance that I would counsel my boyfriends to do was to eat her food, and as much of it as possible. She truly had a vision for creating a family that was dynamic, a house that was filled with guests and hospitality in keeping with the Abrahamic tradition of generosity and compassion for others. It wasn't just about the cooking and the meals, though. My mom relished life as a sensuous experience. She relished tasting little bits of every dish when we went to buffets. And at restaurants, she had this really annoying tendency to try to get us all to order different things so that she could have tastes of each of our individual orders. She scraped every dish to save the last little tidbit of leftovers, both out of frugality, but also just because good to the last drop was pretty much her attitude about how she wanted to live. So it was especially cruel that she passed of an upper GI cancer that made eating difficult in the last few weeks of her life. It took us from her in a way that was all too soon, but also in the spirit of my mom's ever amazing ability to find silver linings, took her blessedly quickly and without too much pain. When she was first diagnosed, she told me that they found all these tumors in her stomach, but now she didn't have to worry about being on a diet. So it was back to cookies again, and ice cream. Within the same initial conversation, she told me, though, that she was at peace and in a position of acceptance about the life that she had lived. Her attitude was, enjoy me while you got me. And so we did. She was surrounded by family and dear friends in her last week of life, including our having a tremendous Thanksgiving break together at my home in Lancaster, and even more recently, a marvelous vacation in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, which was one of her favorite places in the world. She loved nature, especially wildlife sightings. I can picture her pointing, a deer, and basking in the sunshine, usually without sunscreen. She relished going to the opera and the symphony. She baked the best challah. Her Hamantaschen were legendary. Her fridge was abundant, like her life, packed with photos of people she loved on the outside. Inside it was and remains overwhelmingly, intimidatingly bounteous, even to the point of slightly hazardous. Sometimes I had to shield my head from a falling Tupperware. Only she could truly, effectively navigate the chaos that was that world. My mom had strong convictions. Those included beliefs about the positive benefits of drinking lemon water, getting good sleep, and adoring a good piece of dark chocolate. But more seriously, she was an all-natural mama. She was a mentor for many new moms around home birth and breastfeeding. She showed Ethan's birth video the night before I got married in this synagogue to some of my friends. It was an epic birth, it really was. She taught by example that one could be strongly feminist while also taking years off of a career to do mothering. For her, that was the most important work. She was a penny pincher, a bargain hunter, and loved a good thrift store. But her values were also about saving money so that she could spend it on unforgettable travel experiences and investments that gave deep meaning to our lives. Our family took several international trips together, including major all-family vacations to Israel in 1988 when Dara was only 6 months old, and to Europe and Israel in 1999. The family did a cross-country road trip a few years later, and just as she had come with her parents to visit Eddie when he was in Africa, my mom and the three younger siblings, my mom and Danny and Ethan, I should say, visited me and Dara in Brazil, in the Brazilian Amazon, for a month. That was all her insistence on being witness to our various home places and life experiences, and David's commitment to that too. Just 2 years ago, she spent 8 weeks with me in France. She was meticulous and a highly efficacious travel planner for us all, too. She really jumped at the chance to help us find airplane tickets and to book timeshare condos for our vacations in Hilton Head. She seemed to have boundless energy, and she was always jumping up to help people out. She was proud to show up this year to protests, to defend our democracy, to deliver Get Out the Vote postcards, even carrying by the thousands in her backpack on Frontier Airlines, to Pennsylvania, where she came to visit me, so that they could have a Pennsylvania swing state zip code as the postmark. So it was done right. She was a good neighbor in our little corner of Rogers Park, which has an incredible network of resource sharing and mutual aid going on. My mom was also delightfully earnest. She had this very unfiltered way of thinking out loud that made it both really easy to talk to her and remarkably frustrating when you were standing in the kitchen on a phone call and she chimed in with her 2 cents. She was adorably gullible, which made April Fool's Day really fun for us.
Not for her.
Yeah, not so much for her.
Although she still remembers my imaginary girlfriend from from one April Fool's.
Yeah. And she was traumatized by my fake tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one. You had a lot of good ones.
Yeah, she was traumatized, everyone.
Sorry, Mom. I think she was just really deeply honest, and she tended to trust in others and in the universe, to be honest. In the face of daunting challenges, she always embraced this positive outlook in response to adversity. We had a joke in our family about rustic charm restaurants and going the long way, which was what she called a shortcut. Every road trip, we sang, "Oh, what a beautiful morning," no matter the weather. Finding silver linings was pretty much her superpower. She had an infectious smile which exuded her usual internal state. Yeah? Do you want to say something? Okay. It exuded her usual internal state, which was loving life, acting with kindness, radiating joy into the world. She valued her own Jewish identity and her Jewish community, expressing those values through regular Torah study, being an active participant in the life of Emanuel congregation, and doing acts of mitzvot, especially like the Ma'ot Chitim food box volunteering that our family club would do. Yes, there is a family club. In fact, would the family club members all raise their hands? She was their president. Thank you. She loved classical music, reading novels and the arts, and devoted much of her life's work to supporting musical concerts in the Chicago area. In her earlier years, she founded the Jewish Art Center Community Orchestra, where she played cello and where her dad, my grandpa Irving Letchinger, was a conductor. They performed in this space right behind you. Music connected her to David, who she loved with a passion, devotion, and a purity of connection that was paralleled only in some of the rom-coms that they enjoyed watching together. Music was their happy place, and my mom had a lot of fun playing cello on her amateur level, but I think equally as much listening to music and having music fill their lives and their home was truly her life force. Classical music has imbued pretty much all of her children's lives, especially Ethan's and Danny's, but also Rafi's, mine, and Dara's. You okay?
I'm fine.
No injuries today. My mom's remarkable ability to listen to people and to draw them into conversation was part of her deepest skill set. And it was that ability, combined with her intuitive interest in supporting people striving to reach their goals and potentials, which led her into career counseling. She was a master at catching typos and resumes on CVs. Nina spoke about this, but it's so true that she could both see the really big picture and help people think it through while simultaneously being really in the weeds, pointing out all these incorrectly placed commas and margins and alignments and the use of the past passive voice, which she hated. All of us kids knew that this went well beyond her professional line of work and extended, hold on, I'm trying to get through this. All of us kids knew that this went well beyond her professional line of work and extended into our own careers. But me especially, she was my first line copy editor as well, Nina, for the whole first decade of my academic career. She worked at the University of Chicago, where she studied as an undergraduate and became deeply committed to the importance of a liberal arts education. She helped myriad students and mentees find jobs, land internships, and advance their careers. And I get the sense from hearing my mom's professional life stories that she was a real doer. She helped us start the Walk with Israel. She was the one staff person, executive director of the nonprofit ISMA, the Evanston In-School Music Association, in her post-retirement career. She organized all these concerts to be available for public school students in Evanston. Sharing her love of music with others was really also her second life's work. My mom was a loyal and longtime friend to many of you here. She truly welcomed the stranger, including visitors from all over the world. That included many of my college friends, a Brazilian rock band, several French exchange students, a German exchange student, people from Egypt and Morocco, an organist who first arrived at our house thinking he'd stay for 3 weeks and ended up staying for 7 months. There are many people who think of my mom as their adopted mom, or kin in the expansive sense. As my mom, our mom, we knew her loyalty and her ardent, fierce support role on a completely different level. She came to our soccer games. She would not miss any of our major performances or our minor performances. Sometimes she kept too close a track on our various deadlines and deliverables, much more so than we actually wanted, because her reminders and her enthusiasm for our success could feel a little overwhelming. She was a super active grandma. She was really eager to help with childcare whenever a chance arose. She loved her 3 grandchildren, Nora, Leora, and Oren, with such an exuberance, and she loved being Grammy to them. She took so much joy in spending time with them and pride in seeing their every new development and accomplishment. Most of all, her life's mission was about love. She loved being with her friends and family and bringing us all together. She showed up for others in moments of both pain and joy. We did our best to reflect that love and positivity back at her, and to come together as often as our full lives allowed. For us, she was our family matriarch who stepped without missing a beat into the impossibly big shoes of her own wonderful mother, my Grandma Lila. She will live on through all of us now. As my wise family friend also recently shared, my mom will now be able to see the world through our eyes, just as we had learned to see the world through hers. Thank you. You want to add anything, little one? Thank you.
When I first met Annalee at Union Institute in Economowoc, before it gained the rest of its initials, it was 1966 or thereabouts, and we were both on staff at the summer camp. I first knew her as Ed's older sister, as Eddie and I had been campers in Chalutzim in 1965. How could I ever have imagined that 10 years later, we would be living in a 6-flat together with 4 other families from Amchai and Chutzpah, the Chavurah political group we were a part of. We attended each other's home births and nursed our babies and toddlers together. How many mornings did I climb the 2 flights of stairs to sit in her kitchen, not the same table, discussing our kids, our husbands, and so much more I can no longer remember. Those kids have grown-up kids themselves. We shared our joys and woes and chickenpox. Once, when our oldest children were very young, Annalee and Stanley invited us to go on vacation with them to a timeshare in Tennessee. The chickenpox there went from Eve to my Jacob, and then found Rafi and my Ari back at home. You remember that? We shared recipes, and at Purim we consulted over hamantashen. But where I had 2 different doughs and 3 fillings, she had 3, maybe 4 different doughs and 6 or 8 fillings. I know those numbers grew over the years. We lost that daily contact when Leo and I moved out of the city in 1986. But those 9 years in such close proximity gave our families, deep roots with each other, which gave us all such joy. In reflection, I realized that Annalee and I had a relationship where we could tell each other anything and everything, and we did, including our worries, our concerns about our parents, our husbands, and our children. We gave each other support and advice, and never judgment. We showed up for each other to celebrate and to mourn, and it never occurred to me, like Anne, that we wouldn't grow old together. I realize, don't you, that I took so much for granted. Her joy, her loyalty, her compassion, her clear-headedness, the way her face would light up when she saw you. So I invite you now to share how Annalee was a blessing to you in one word. And may we hold these blessings close to us, learn from them, and generously share them with the world. So we'll start over here. In the back. Anyone else back there? And now we invite Dara and David up to share. Dara. I know a Dara. Sorry. I know you're Dara.
May the wind carry her spirit gently. May the fire release her soul. May the waters cleanse her. May she be wrapped in love and gratitude of the many lives she has touched.
Please rise for El Molei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
Il Malachim, Shochem Mamramim, Hamseim Duchan Nochana, Tachat Kanfei Chashchina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kizohar Rakiyam Aziri, Enishmat Chana Elka Bat Leva Yisrael Shehal Olama Barachamim Yasirei HaBeseit Kenefav LaOlamim V'yitror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Chana Elka Bat Leah Yisrael, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. After the mourner's Kaddish, the family will leave the room to music, and then you are all invited to Letterer Hall behind you to join us at Annalee's table to share memories, tears, and laughter, and of course, food. The family will be sitting Shiva at their residence, 6711 North Ashland, as follows. Tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, from 11 to 1:30, with Kaddish Minyan at 12:30, and from 5 to 8, with the Minyan at 7. On Friday, Shiva will only be midday, 11 to 1:30, with Minyan at 12:30. We rise now for the mourner's Kaddish. Which I don't know where it is here. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
B'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mivarach le'olam olmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal. Shemei d'kudsha brihu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us.
Adonai roi lo echsar b'hindotecha שאני ברצני, עמי מנוחות, עמי מנוחות, ינעלני. נפשי, נפשי, יושבי, יעני במגלי צדק, למען שמו, למען שמו, גם גילך וגיד צמאוות. טוב וחסד יברדפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Adonai, Adonai, Roi. Adonai, Adonai, Roesar. Oh, say shalom bimrama.